Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to this Catalyst new moon forecast. We have an upcoming Aries new moon on the 29th of March, 2025. That is also a partial solar eclipse. So lots of very deep, very karmic energies associated with this new moon. So if you haven't checked it out already, there is a forecast for the eclipse season that is already up on the channel. It talks about the main astrological themes for the eclipse cycle as a whole, which is a 6-month cycle. I go into the mechanics of the eclipse and what eclipses mean astrologically, how we actually have them astronomically in the sky. And just looking at, the large overview of what to expect over the next 6 months. So just keep that in mind as we go through the main astrological themes for the next 2 weeks as we do on these new and full moon forecasts. It is an Aries new moon. It is the first new moon after the equinox. So this is a very potent time of initiating new creation, new creative projects, just newness as a whole. And it's still very fresh. It is something that is not necessarily already concretely formulated. It's just the impulse to be is starting to come online. But keep in mind that the newness, the desire, the potentiality for this new life, these new creative visions, whatever they are for us. And of course, knowing where this energy is in your own chart is very helpful to see what area of life this is really manifesting in or will. Just keep in mind that this is something that is much deeper than the standard 4-week lunar cycle of personal development. We're talking about the soul's journey when we're talking about eclipses. So if you haven't checked out that video, I recommend doing so, just so you get a sense of what to expect over the course of the next 6 months, the energies of the whole when it comes to the eclipses. The cycle itself started with a full moon lunar eclipse, and I have to say it feels like several lifetimes since that full moon has happened. I know that's only been 2 weeks, but it has felt like 2 millennia. There's so much change and so much shifting that has occurred. It's almost on the daily that there's something new pops up and reframes everything, right? And of course, with lunar eclipses, we feel things just as intensely as any other full moon, but the distortion of the shadow of the earth makes it not as illuminated as it normally would be. And we know that these energies that we feel, the experiences that we're having emotionally and subconsciously are not fully illuminated, that we have to really check in with ourselves at that deeper level and know that things won't really come to fruition until this cycle plays itself out, which is 6 months from now. So before we get into the fullness of the astrology for the next 2 weeks, which is what we're here to do, just a couple of PSAs about things, especially with what's going on with Catalyst. So I'm going to share with you just to remind you that I do have, let me, it's multitasking tends to be an issue for me with a lot of things. And I don't think that's necessarily a terrible thing, to be perfectly honest. I feel like that it's a good thing to be able to focus on one thing at a time here. So I'm bringing up that I still have some room left to do personal astrological forecasts for the eclipse season in relation to your own personal charts. And the reason I'm bringing that up, obviously, if you're interested, you can go to my website and book this forecast, but also, too, that I am offering a new benefit to people who are monthly subscribers through Subscribestar. Again, you can get to that information in the description box below. You can link right to Subscribestar and see what the monthly contribution options are. But one of the main benefits right now, besides supporting this work, the new and full moon forecasts that I put out publicly, is that there is a discount code related to whatever tier that you subscribe to for just about anything in the store on the website, excluding the packages. The packages are The packages are already discounted so that your discount code does not necessarily apply to the packages, but every other service, including these seasonal and more topical forecasts that I offer, there is a discount code. I'm also offering the first 30 days free for subscription. So if you go and you sign up, you're not charged for the first 30 days. You still have access to a discount code, and then you can book this eclipse forecast. And I'm still going to take bookings up until about the full moon, which is going to be on the 12th of April, because we are looking at 6 months ahead. And so even though the eclipses have officially passed or about to pass, there's still value in looking at where things are situated in your chart, what particular things are being brought up in relation to your charts with this eclipse, and then looking at the 6 months ahead, what to expect, what type of assets, what type of challenges, what does the temporal map look like for you in relation to these eclipses? Because again, this is about the soul journey when we're talking about eclipses, and sometimes that's not as obvious in terms of our conscious mind, which is why using a tool like astrology, for instance, is really helpful. So you can go to the description box below. You can have access to my website. You can have access to Subscribestar and see. And then one of the other benefits I started offering as of this last week, actually, is that I do a monthly energetic snapshot for subscribers only. So that is a full intuitive card reading. I'm aiming to do that once a month around the full moon. That's usually a time that we need some extra support, and that's going to be exclusive to people who are subscribers. So if you sign up, again, it's free for the first 30 days, and you have access to the one that I just posted for my email list as a promotion and for the people who are already subscribed. And then you'll be getting that card reading. So you get a video just like this with the card reading. You get a picture, a JPEG, right? A file that's attached to your Subscribestar post, and then you have access to that as well. And of course, you can interact, you can send me messages, you can comment on Subscribestar, and it is an unlisted video actually on YouTube and Rumble, so you can also comment there as well. So there's my PSA. Just want to get it out of the way, let you know that those are the things that I am offering as of now, and you can get a discount on the eclipse season personal forecast for yourself if you sign up, and you get the first 30 days free, and you get the energetic snapshot that I am offering. Okay, so now let's get into what we're all here for, which is the astrology of the upcoming new moon and the partial solar eclipse. So I'm not going to go into the details about the path and the shadow, where it is, the mechanics. Again, like I said, that's all part of the March eclipse forecast that I put up already. So again, I would encourage you to check that out if you're interested. However, one thing I do want to share before we get into the astrology is to just draw people's attention real quick to what's going on in terms of our star, in terms of space weather. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because there is this monster, and some of this, if you know this already, this is just review for you. And let me close this out real quick. I'm having a hard time. There's something in my way on this program. Okay, what should I do? What should I do? I'm trying to close this window. Okay, anyway, never mind. Okay, it apparently just wants to stay there. I don't know if you actually see it, but I do. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is here, there is this monster, absolute monster of a coronal hole. It's actually the biggest one in this solar cycle, as you can see here. If you're looking at the screen, I'm at spaceweather.com, and if you look to the left and you see the image, actually I'll bring it up a lot bigger so you can see it in its fullness, right? This is monster, right? This is a huge coronal hole, and if you don't know what a coronal hole is, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a hole in the corona of the sun, a big dark patch, and plasma from inside the sun is able to exit a lot faster, and it connects to our magnetic field, the interplanetary magnetic field. It connects to our magnetic field, and we get a stream of solar wind. And so I've talked about this plenty, but this is huge. And one thing that has been happening is that we are getting solar wind speed that is well over almost 800 kilometers per second, which is outrageously fast. And even if you're looking at some of the imagery of the auroras that are coming in, because we're getting much faster and beforehand much more dense plasma coming in and creating these auroras. So these types of events really have an effect on anything that is electromagnetic, whether it's our own bodies, whether it's the Schumann resonance, whether it's the grid of the planet itself, right? The atmosphere, the ionosphere, the magnetosphere, we're all bioelectrical, right? And so this is impacting us right now. So if you're noticing any strange symptoms, if you're having headaches, inflammation, you're just having things are off in your body, be sure to ground yourself, quite literally, going outside, putting your bare feet on the ground, because the earth and we too are certainly much more capable of actually managing this energy without all the interference of everything else. So, and the earth especially. So going out and grounding, doing the things that balance you out electrically are really important as well. And so I actually have plenty of content that's on this channel about those things, and it's under the series Defense Against the Dark Arts. And I have a whole video about the biochemical stuff that you can do. I have a whole video about cymatics and sound in order to balance your field, so to speak. And so that's always good to go back to if you haven't done it in a while, or if you need a refresher, or if it's all new to you. But I just wanted to point this out because this is big. And we have solar storm conditions that are almost KP7, which is pretty big. And if the magnetic field of the planet is weakening in order to prepare for some sort of shift in that realm, then these types of events are even more impactful, and it just necessitates even more attention to these things. And there's a lot of stuff out there to distract us and to keep us in a negative frame of mind, worried, fearful, all of those things. And that takes away from our ability to really ground ourselves, to stay centered, to allow the body and our own field to be full, to provide a buffer, so to speak. So I just wanted to bring that up, especially because, not everybody's following this. I've made it my business over the past years to really understand this. I do have a very basic background in stellar physics, right? The physics of stars, and cosmology. So I do understand the basic language. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I ascribe to all of the mainstream science around these things. But if you don't understand the format and you don't understand their system to begin with, then you can't understand how things might actually be inaccurate. And most importantly, to trust your own self, to trust your body, to trust your innate, trust your feelings and your senses, and learn to feel the shifts of energy in your own body and around you so you can mitigate the negative symptoms, because we can't continue to rely on any sort of external organization or force or even a person to tell us what to do and what not to do. We really need to, if we haven't already, trust ourselves and learn to interpret the language of our own innate. Okay. And so following this type of stuff has been very helpful for me personally to learn the difference between, okay, that's a natural shift in my body. That's an unnatural shift in my body. That's an intrusion of non-native EMF versus, oh, this is the solar energy coming in, these solar codes coming in and actually having a positive effect. There's a difference, right? So I know for me personally that, skin eruptions are a big one, things breaking out on my body. That's just me personally. Everybody has an inflammation. Everybody has different things. So, all right, let's get into the astrology again, which is why we're all here. So I'm going to bring up the chart here of today and we're going to get into it. Actually, no, first I'm going to show you Stellarium, which is the planetarium astronomy software that I use. It's free. Stellarium, you can download it for free onto your devices, and you have your own planetarium on your device. And here, let me put on my my PPE here. So speaking of non-native EMF and blue light toxicity, if you're not wearing your blue blockers whenever you're looking at a screen, you are not protecting yourself. So, and it's not like I'm sponsored by any of these people. I'm just letting you know that this has made a huge impact in the last year or so on my physical and emotional mental health. My energetic health is to protect myself. One other thing I've stopped doing is wearing sunglasses. I will never wear sunglasses. I didn't wear sunscreen for a long time, but I stopped wearing sunglasses this year and started wearing these. So anytime I look at a screen, and it has made a huge difference. So I mean, it's not 100% prophylactic, but is definitely helping. So let me see here. Let's get into stellarium because I want to show you. Here we go. I want to show you in real time what the eclipse is going to look like. So for those of us on the east coast of the U.S. and really North America, okay, maybe I can close this out on my touch screen. What should I do? There we go. I don't... this is really annoying. Hold on one second. I'm gonna... Oh, I guess I can't pause it when I'm sharing something. Let me stop sharing. I'm gonna pause. Okay, well, apparently I can't... Sorry, guys. We're just being real over here. For whatever reason, I can't close this out. I doubt you can see it, so it's probably just a distraction for me. But let's look here at stellarium. That was the whole point. I wanted to look at the actual... Here we go. So, for those of us who are on the east coast of North America, especially the northeast, up into northeast Canada, the west side of Greenland, this is where the shadow of this eclipse is going to be occurring. So for those of us on the east coast and the northeast, which is where I'm at sunrise especially, we're going to get to see, most of the eclipse. And as you can see on this particular image here, you can see this little dot here, which is the moon coming into conjunction with the sun at the latitude of the nodes. And like I said, that's in my eclipse forecast as a whole. I explain the mechanics, how we get eclipses. So we're going to actually get a visual of this at sunrise. I love that. That's wonderful. So one thing I want to share with you too before we get into the charts themselves is that in tropical astrology, the degree of the new moon eclipse is going to be 9 degrees of Aries. But in sidereal astrology, everything is still in the constellation of Pisces. So depending on what system you tend to use and what you use it for, the energy is going to be, it's not going to be different, but how you approach it is going to be a little bit different, right? There's a lot of energy in Pisces, in sidereal right now. And sidereal is just looking where everything is in real time in the actual sky, which is in the constellation of Pisces, which is made up by fixed stars. But in tropical astrology, it is the vernal equinox that marks 0 degrees Aries, and then the rest of the zodiac is determined from that point in equal 30-degree segments all around the zodiac. And so and that is determined, where in the sky is determined by the precession of the equinoxes, right? So for every degree, the vernal equinox moves a degree every 72 years. And if you take 72 years times 360, which is a full circumference, you get, 26,000 years. So you're looking at a 26,000 year cycle of the precession of the equinoxes. That's what that means. So modern astrophysics and cosmology says it's the wobble of the earth. That is not the only perspective on what this cycle is of the precession of the equinoxes. And in sidereal and Vedic astrology, it is our journey around the center of the galaxy, that our solar system around the galaxy, that marks this precession. So anyway, I primarily use tropical astrology, but I want to bring the sidereal in just so you can see and track for yourself where these things are actually happening in relation to these fixed stars, which is in the constellation of Pisces. So, of course, with Pisces, there is a there is a fog, there is fantasy, there is illusion, there is formlessness, there's undifferentiation. And with Mercury here, Neptune here, Venus here, especially Mercury and Venus in their retrograde, when it comes to sidereal astrology, and I'll show that to you right now in the sidereal chart, you'll see for yourself here that everything is stacked up in the early degrees of Pisces, including the North Node, including Neptune, Mercury, Venus. Even Saturn is a degree away from coming into the constellation of and sign of Pisces. And so in terms of where things are right now in the sky, there is a sense of possible, falseness or delusion or illusion that we have to be aware of. But when it comes to the Western astrology, which is what I'm showing you right now, and I'm going to format this really quickly for you. I have to stop sharing. Sorry about that, guys. I'm still getting used to using this particular software, this program, but I think we're good now. Okay, so, and I only have one window to show you now. Everything else is closed out, and we can move on here. So, I hope you can't see this tab. Ah, it's finally gone. Yay. All right. So, but everything is in the sign of Aries. Well, not everything. Actually, Venus is now in Pisces, like I said, is retrograded back into the Pisces, is going to meet Neptune today. Saturn is in Pisces, the North Node of the Moon, the true North Node, the oscillating North Node is in Pisces. And in fact, the Moon, the balsamic Moon, is also in Pisces. But we have Mercury still in Aries, even though it's retrograde. The Sun is in Aries. The new moon itself will be in Aries. We have Chiron in Aries as well. So there is this sense of newness, but I would caution people just to be aware of the fact, as I've talked about before, that Mercury and Venus are both retrograde. And in fact, they both station retrograde at the same degree as the upcoming new moon solar eclipse. So that tells you a lot about what that particular degree really represents. The fact that there has been some with Venus and Mercury in particular, they're retrogrades. Like, these are internalized experiences when these planets station retrograde. So it's an illusion. It looks like it's going backwards relative to us. They're not really going backwards, but they look like it, and we experience them that way from our perspective. So Mercury in its retrograde is definitely much more of an internalized mental review, right? We're going over things, we're proofreading things, we are reviewing things mentally. Maybe our communication is much more internalized. We're not really communicating out so much, but maybe we're listening more. And especially coming back into Pisces, there's definitely a lot more listening, a lot more, well, how do I put it? It's more expansive coming into Pisces in terms of our thought processes, and more spiritual as well. And we're going to get into the connection between Mercury and Neptune, especially in its retrograde. So Venus is also retrograde. And for all the things that Venus represents in terms of beauty and harmony and relationships and, resources and comfort, she really represents ultimately our feelings, and not our emotional feelings, but our senses, what we feel in our feels in terms of our physicality, right? This is our gut check. This is our intuition that comes through Venus. And it's those experiences that are much more in line with what's meaningful to us, what's valuable to us. And not to say that our emotions aren't a way to determine what's valuable and meaningful, but we all know that our emotions, right, that those Cancerian energies that are ruled by the moon, because that's about personal emotion, right, and personal feeling. We do know that they are not the same as our gut instincts, our innate, right? Those are different things. And Venus, it's much more connected to the the intuition that we have, right? We might have a specific feeling about something emotionally, but if we were really draw back into our intuition, right? That is a different feeling, and that's what Venus represents. So now that she's in her retrograde, she has really given us a chance to go and really be internal about those things, and really review those things. Really consider, is this how am I feeling what I'm feeling, right? Maybe put them into a review. Maybe just kind of sit back and again listen with those feelers rather than acting on them. And it's kind of hard with Venus and Aries, because Aries is ultimately about action and enterprising, and Venus, she's not at her best there. That's not an energy that Venus represents, which is forward moving and momentum and acting and enterprising. But yet in Aries, she's kind of feeling like we're feeling like we got to do something about what's valuable, what's meaningful, and pulling back in this retrograde and definitely coming back into Pisces is so much more of a muse energy. And especially in the retrograde, I think there's a lot of reconsideration about what is valuable at the humanitarian level for all of us in terms of compassion, unconditional love. These are all these Piscean themes. And of course, the fact that she's meeting Neptune today, as of the 27th, with the moon in Pisces, with the moon coming to meet Saturn as well by tomorrow, leading up to this new moon. We're definitely in not just our own fields, but we are in the collective fields. We are in the ether, so to speak. And meeting with Neptune in this place is can be very disappointing if we have not been very realistic about things, or we've idealized things. And there's a lot of the victim mentality. There's a lot of victimhood that factors into Pisces, and especially Neptune in Pisces. And I feel like Venus in her retrograde is not going to accommodate that with Neptune as much today, right? It might be a sore spot for some people that have really been capitalizing on that role in or playing that role. And I think that's going to come out quite a bit with the T-square with Mars and Chiron and Lilith, which I'll get to, because that is very pronounced leading into this new moon. And Mars is the ruler of Aries. And so Mars is definitely going to be ruling this new moon and this eclipse. And in Cancer, we get very protective of our own and protective of what matters to us through our feelings. And sometimes, as I said, acting on those feelings is not always the best. And I do feel like that Venus in her retrograde right now, coming back into Pisces, can be a very necessary moment of just like diving back into those values at a spiritual level, and really making sure that they are in fact in alignment with our highest values. So this is the current chart, and let's start moving forward. I don't really have anything else in terms of today, other than, like I said, Venus coming back into Pisces, conjunct Neptune, and the moon moving through Pisces today into tomorrow. And again, balsamic moon. This is a great time to just settle into those really magical spaces of the moon in Pisces. Yes, the moon is going to meet Saturn tomorrow, as we're going to see, but that's usually a moment where we kind of tap into our sense of responsibility, our sense of maturity, and I mean, this degree of Saturn, 24 to 25 degrees of Saturn, as we're going to see, is about a cathartic purge. Definitely a cathartic purge. So let's look forward here on the 28th, because I think also too that T square is going to start showing itself with Lilith in Libra. So one of the things that really stuck out to me, I will say, is paying attention to Black Moon Lilith right now, because this is where the full moon is going to be. So she's holding the space with where the next full moon on the 12th is going to be, which is coming into conjunction with Spica and Arcturus. So as that starts to show itself in the chart, we'll get into it more. So let's see here. Like I said, we're really just looking at the balsamic moon phase. I would, again, 24 to 25 degrees Pisces is about it's about the purging of the priesthood. That's actually the degree of the Sabian symbol, right? Is the purging of the priesthood. And so it can be certainly a collective experience. But I also would say with the moon here coming to meet Saturn is that it's going to really instill a sense of emotional responsibility and resilience to this type of event or energy. And sometimes this can mean on a personal level that the soul intervenes in order to initiate a catharsis, to bring us back in alignment to our Dharma, right? Which is where Saturn has been sitting, right? We all have a Dharma. We all have our role to play. We have to be realistic about what our limitations are, as well as what our gifts and talents are, so that we're all playing the part that is divinely mandated, essentially. And then the next degree, 25 degrees Pisces, is that purging, right? And like I said, at a personal level, this is where the soul intervenes to provide that catharsis. And coming into a balsamic moon, I would say just let it flow through you, right? It could be highly emotional. It could be very difficult because of Saturn involved here, because Saturn is very unyielding, even in Pisces. It kind of provides that anchor in a lot of ways in the ocean. But at the same time, like I said, there's an emotional resilience and responsibility and a sense of really, because the moon rules Cancer, which is about home and family and where we belong and our personal power. It also is allowing us to be emotionally very, very grounded in that responsibility and allowing that catharsis, right? So this can express itself in a lot of different ways, but I will say that we come into Friday the 28th and the moon is meeting Saturn, this is a very powerful moment. And it may be something that happens out in the public realm here, and especially because Saturn usually rules the 10th house, which is about the public profile. So, but how we each emotionally feel about it might be the cathartic moment. So just be aware of that. And like I said, Venus and Neptune today, the 27th, coming into alignment with each other, especially in her retrograde. It can be very disappointing if we have over-idealized a situation and we just kind of have something come sweeping through. And the fact that it's like Venus represents that woman in the thumbnail emerging from the ocean, but it's, there's no guarantees of anything. It could easily slip back into that formless, undifferentiated space of the divine matrix or the divine womb. But it doesn't mean she's not going to come back. And maybe this is part of the cathartic moment, is that coming back, we just kind of emerge just a little bit. Oh man, I see I can feel that. I can feel that emergence, but then it's coming back in to a state where we need to kind of go back in, like it's just kind of peeking its head out and then coming back into that formless state, because, maybe there's more to be inspired by, right? Maybe there is a sense of, is this what I want to bring forward into this next phase? Because whether we like it or not, it's coming with us. And I will say, on a personal level, before we get into the eclipse itself, whatever dark attachments we all have, because we all have them, I assure you they have been working overtime to maintain their hold. They're grappling, their tendrils are and they're showing themselves in a way that I personally haven't seen in a very long time. And so things that have been, thank you, Brother Matthew, by the way, obscured up until recently, right, are showing themselves, and this is out in the public sphere, but this is happening for each of us personally. And I would, that might be part of also the work of this catharsis, right? Is this allowing things to eventually come to the surface, and they have come to the surface, and it's very easy to kind of push them back down because we don't want to deal with it. We don't know if we have the strength or the capacity to actually handle it. Maybe we are getting too much. Maybe this energy has been, actually helping us in some ways, but it has a shelf life, right? It has an expiration date, and we don't want to necessarily take this with us if it is, in fact, has moved past its time. So I just want to reaffirm to people, especially if you've been struggling and you know that those attachments, whatever they are, ancestral, past life contracts, if you have any kind of dark, shadowy attachment that's been there, it is showing itself, and because it's getting to the point where it can't be here anymore, but we have to participate in the process of releasing it. Otherwise, it's going to take us down with it. And I do feel like that this Venus-Neptune energy could very much do that today if we don't allow this kind of catharsis intervention, the cathartic intervention of the moon and Saturn to really sweep through, okay? And that's difficult. It's not easy, right? But the North Node is the direction of our soul's journey right now. And there is this movement towards that as well, because the nodes move naturally in a retrograde. So we have everything we need. And sometimes we don't necessarily like the fact that we have certain things, but they are there because they are tailored to our individual needs. And so sometimes we need difficult situations in order to have the opportunity and the free will to release those chains that bind us, so to speak. It's just everybody's on their own journey, right? Everybody's in a different place around it. And so also having some compassion for yourself and other people is really important right now. And maybe Venus and Neptune together, that's a really good way to utilize that energy, is to have some compassion and forgiveness for yourself, right? That we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And that we're all working in accordance to what we do have, okay? So let's get to that's just, looking at the 28th and like this balsamic moon phase being really, really intense. So let's move into, like I said, the 29th, which is at dawn here on the East Coast. This is where we get the solar eclipse. Now, leading up to this, as you can see, is this T-square. Now, I talked about this in the forecast already. The eclipse forecast. So I'm just going to bring it up again, pointing out this T-square with Lilith, Mars in Cancer, and Chiron in Aries. So whenever you have a T-square, you have two opposing points, which is Chiron and Black Moon Lilith, and then you have a point, which is Mars in Cancer. But really you have a ghost point that creates a grand square, which is a box that you can't really get out of. The only way out is through, and it's four corners of frustration that you can just like keep bouncing around and bouncing around trying to break out of, when really you have to learn to spin it in order to transmute this energy, right? You're not getting out of it. It's very frustrating. And with a T-square, you're kind of, without the ghost point being a consideration, you kind of settle into this square, which is the square point here of the T-square, which is Mars in Cancer. And there is, I do feel like there is a sense that we all want to act on something that we don't quite know fully yet, something that we feel subconsciously, right? That we know is there. There's a critique, there's a criticism, there's a sense of what is needing healing within each of us and within our families, maybe when we're talking about Cancer, within those that are closest to us, within our own root system, if you want to think about it that way. And there is a desire to act on it, but I would say the ghost point at 22 to 23 degrees Capricorn, and I already talked about this once before, if you remember, that 23 degrees Capricorn is the same degree that Saturn-Pluto conjunction happened in January of 2020. This is the piece that we're missing. There is a need for recompense. There is a need of balancing accounts, right? And without that piece, you don't get the full picture of the inner fulfillment that Chiron represents. Everything we need is within ourselves, that we don't necessarily need anything outside of ourselves. And then you have Lilith in Libra, right? Which is this primal power, right? That if we acknowledge this space within us that is really there to allow divine flame, right? The Holy Spirit, however you look at that, to come into that space, then there is incredible power here with Black Moon Lilith. But oftentimes people try to either bypass that or overcompensate because they feel disempowered with Black Moon Lilith. They want to fill the void, and we end up doing that. Not they, we end up doing that by disempowering other people, disempowering ourselves, acting out. And this degree of Libra, 23 degrees Libra, right? This is a rooster saluting the dawn, right? I mean, there is a sense of really wanting to get somewhere and really wanting to act on what we know needs to heal within ourselves, within our families, within our traditions, right? All those Cancerian energies that are really close to home. But there's a piece here that needs to be considered, which is much bigger, which has to do with a balancing of accounts. And without that, this T-square can really kind of throw us off. And, we taking that with us throughout the next 6 months, if we are, chomping at the bit here to get somewhere, we're going to be really frustrated. So I just want to point this out again because this energy is very present coming into this eclipse. It is very important. And for those of you who did get the monthly energetic snapshot, this came out beautifully in the reading, right? That we need to take that 40,000 mile view here. We are too enmeshed in this situation. We need to step way back in order to see things for what they are and realize that this time for us now is for deep emotional healing, and that there are things that we are going to walk away from. We might not be ready. It might not be right the time. And I would say based on this T-square, it's not the right time necessarily. It will be, and we feel it, and we're ready. But if we try to force this issue with this T-square and not recognize the fullness of the situation, we're going to kind of sabotage ourselves here. So just be aware of that. It's all about the timing, and there's healing that needs to happen before. And I know people are like, rip the damn Band-Aid off, like I'm ready. But I assure you, if it is not time to rip that Band-Aid off, you're just going to work against your healing process, okay? So that's what I'm getting from this energy. And like I said, the card reading, the monthly energetic snapshot, it just laid it out beautifully. So when we get to the eclipse itself, which is the morning of the 29th here on the East Coast, you're going to see here that Moon and Sun in conjunction, as we saw. Mercury will be at 0 degrees Aries, also in its retrograde, as you can see. And Venus is on her way to meeting up with the North Node and with Saturn. So we've talked endlessly about this eclipse. Just to kind of reiterate the Sabian symbol, 9 degrees of Aries is, kind of looking into the crystal ball. And it's not about divination. It is about it is about being able to see the whole picture for what it is and focus on that rather than in getting caught up in any of the details, how we get there, all of the various parts. 10 degrees, so it requires a concentrated attention, right? And again, when you're too up close to something, you can't see the big picture. And we're really being offered this opportunity to really zoom out in order to see the full picture here. Now, that's 9 degrees. 10 degrees of Aries, which is technically, we round up for Sabian symbols. 10 degrees of Aries, a teacher gives new symbolic forms to traditional images, a revision of attitude at the beginning of a new cycle. So just know that by the time we get to September, we will have a revised attitude. right? But it's going to take time. It's going to take the process of things playing out, the balancing of accounts that started with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January of 2020. I know it's frustrating because it's been years, but when you think about it on a grand galactic scale, I just talked about one revolution around our galaxy is 26,000 years. So getting caught up and frustrated and wanting things now, which is what Mars wants, can be working against ourselves and the divine timing. So there's the eclipse, the 29th, like I said, partial solar eclipse. And at the same time, this is when Mercury actually comes into a conjunction with Neptune as well. So our thinking becomes much more broad. It becomes much more spiritualized as Mercury and Neptune come into that conjunction. It's going to be really late on the 29th, coming into the 30th. And on the 30th is when Neptune does come into Aries, which I've talked about as being the first time in 160 some years, since 1860, really. Which was when the Civil War started. So there's a lot of energy, I think, and a lot of push to recreate that type of experience, okay? So, come back here. But let's talk a little bit about Mercury conjunct Neptune a little bit here, because it's at the very last degree of Pisces, again, before Neptune comes into Aries, which will be on the 30th. So when transiting Mercury is in a conjunction with Neptune, it does impact our thinking, right? And our communication as well. Now, remember, Mercury's retrograde, so the communication might be much more of an internalized dialogue between us and our higher self, or us and spirit, or us and God. Right? Maybe we're just kind of going back over information. In its highest manifestation, this transit can give very accurate psychic perception at all levels, right? We're processing spiritual information. And in the last degree of Pisces, it is at the most spiritual in terms of information. And we can express these types of insights. We might be expressing them within ourselves, though. Compassion, support, selflessness, right? Those are all wonderful things, and maybe they need to be directed at ourselves right now. In the negative expression, thoughts and words become twisted, misconceptions, irrationality, confusion, fear, and paranoia. Now, there is plenty of that going around, so just keep in mind with the Mercury retrograde, that's going to be even more pronounced, right? And you can see it already. I mean, we have been seeing it, but just consider the fact that that is going to amp up with the Mercury retrograde. Confusion, fear, paranoia. This can result in people lying, people being deceitful, betrayal, right? Underhanded tactics. So when I talk about how the shadow is is pulling out all the stops right now to maintain its hold on everything, you can bet that this is one of those transits where there will be a capitalization on this potential energy of clouding our judgment and our thinking, right? And so, we can't have, positive toxic positivity where you kind of ignore what's going on for you is not going to work in this particular situation. But you also want to keep in mind that it's very easy to get caught in this type of transit, in the confusion, irrationality, fear, and paranoia. And to just, we're still in the new moon phase, right? This is still a dark moon and it's eclipse. So it's best not to act on anything in this moment. Thinking becomes less linear and more impressionistic, right? Our imagination gets heightened, which can work towards work positively or negatively, making it a potent time for creative pursuits where boundaries between reality and fantasy blur. So if you're in the process of that, boy, this is a great transit for that. You might find yourself daydreaming more, tapping into subconscious insights. That's all great stuff. But you might struggle to separate fact from fiction, right? And that can really work against us when our own perceptions and our rational judgment is clouded and slippery, right? Strong intuition, but rational thought is and judgment is very, very much clouded. So we have to just be mindful of that, especially if you're in a position where you have to make practical types of decisions. Just know that this type of transit and the eclipse around it, it's going to be very difficult. So if you don't have to make any decisions right now, this would be really, really great, right? And remember the T-square, how it's going to draw people out of frustration and friction into wanting to act on something. But spiritual deep dives all day here, right? And so this is a great time to get into your meditation, get into prayer, get into journaling, that type of stuff, right? Or just a healthy approach to escapism. Any type of art and creativity that you're engaged in, right? Grounding practices like journaling or talking things out with a trusted friend helps you stay what? Anchored. It's good to stay anchored. We do have Saturn in Pisces, but that's not, that anchor might not necessarily be the most comfortable thing as the purging, the cathartic purging is happening. So the 30th is when Neptune comes into Aries and the moon is in Taurus, okay? Now, early April, we've been hearing a lot about it. We know that President Trump has said that April 2nd is Liberation Day, okay? So it's really coming into the 4th that I want to draw your attention to. And we're going to do that right now as we go through this chart, okay? Because these transits, yes, Venus is going to meet the North Node in her retrograde as well. And then she's going to come into a conjunction with Saturn, which can be a little bit of a reality check here. And again, what we emotionally might have felt as a catharsis is going to become very real. For some people, because Venus is very visceral, right? Yes, she's in Pisces, but she still represents something that is very palpable, even if it's palpable at the collective level in Pisces. But it's the 4th I want to bring out here. And what I'm going to show you is this really incredible connection here between Saturn, Mars, and Uranus. Okay, so there's this, triangle that's happening. So there's 2 sextiles and a trine, and this is also happening. So this is the 4th, so 4-4, and also keep in mind that this is the first quarter moon. The moon in Cancer is going to be conjunct Sirius in a square to the sun, okay? So just also know that the feels are going to be incredibly powerful, very, very deep, okay? Excuse me 1 second. I'm going to take a drink of tea here. All right. Very powerful. Now, Saturn sextile Uranus, Mars sextile Uranus. We haven't had a lot of Uranus energy since the full moon, right? Uranus conjunct the Pleiades, Uranus at its fall position in Taurus, right? I mean, Taurus is so grounded and stable, and Uranus is like freedom and change and rebellion and, quantum leaps. So it is not an easiest place to have those types and it's been there for the last year or so it's for years. Uranus has been in Taurus, but in conjunction with the Pleiades it's been there for the last year or so these connections between Saturn and Mars in sextile to Uranus, right, 60-degree angle, these are opportunities these are green lights for bold and creative moves, cosmic opportunity to balance stability with progress, right? It's like you can build something new without throwing out the old. Now remember the T-square. I'm going to keep going back to it because that is going to trigger people into just throwing out the old and moving forward without considering the balancing, the stability. This sextile with Saturn and with Mars is about this chance to build something new, this green light for something new without getting rid of the old entirely, right? It's gradual, especially with Saturn, gradual, manageable shifts rather than sudden upheavals, right? You feel inspired to break free from outdated routines, but in a really practical way, something that's grounded. It's less about the chaos that often Uranus will represent, and more about finding creative solutions that work long term. So, and Mars is just that spark that ignites the change without blowing everything up. Now, the moon in Cancer is going to meet Mars soon after this happens. And so that's also going to give that emotional, that personal kind of confidence in a lot of ways to do the things, to feel emotionally confident and grounded and stabilized and powerful, to act on these things. It's energizing. It's exciting. You might get a sudden urge to try something new, right? And a drive to innovate, especially. And of course, when Mars is in a trine to Saturn in and of itself, right? This is the perfect combination of endurance and drive, right? The stamina to push forward with what? A solid plan. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. These sets of transits are so empowering, so productive, so focused, so grounded and balanced. And people often use this energy to build something lasting, right? And so, yeah, there again, you go back to the T-square with Mars and Chiron and Lilith, and you're just like, I just want to get it done now. I just want it to happen now. If you can really manage and manage the, there's no resolving a square, especially a T-square and especially a grand square. You just have, the only way out is through. And when you come through and you make it through the eclipse and we get to the 4th, and yes, there's a quarter moon, we have a challenge of how to integrate ourselves into what is happening. But these transits are incredible on the 4th, right? And so after this, I mean, it just keeps getting better. It really does. The 6th is when the Sun and Jupiter come into a sextile. Wow. Let me bring up the chart here. We're going to go through it. Sun and Jupiter in a sextile. Now, keep in mind that the Sun in Aries is exalted, right? I mean, this forward momentum that the Sun, which is sustaining and illuminating and really and energizing in the sign of enterprising and bold outward momentum. This is a really, and then in a sextile to Jupiter, this is one of the best, right? Optimism, good luck, and happiness. So it's, again, ideal time to reach your goals. There's so much newness in this early April energy that is supporting us putting something long-term into place, all right? And there's growth, there is optimism, positive thinking. Now, of course, this is like a cosmic high five when the Sun and Jupiter come into a sextile. Now, granted, Jupiter is at its detriment in Gemini, so this can be kind of information overload, right? So you don't want to get too optimistic, right? There's a nudge to shine brighter, to seize opportunities. But if you go back to Saturn and Uranus and Mars, again, it's all that energy that is grounded and practical. And then you have these two coming into a sextile that's like, hey, doors are going to open, right? You're getting a subtle boost to your mojo, right? Maybe you start taking the smaller immediate risks to start something new because something has been initiated and activated on a long-term plan. And also, along with this, Venus is in a trine to Mars, right? The divine masculine and feminine in a trine, in a water trine. This is a winner creatively, right? Warm and lively. Wow. This is so incredible. Like, I'm so excited. It doesn't mean that it won't come without its chaos, but especially with Uranus, but at the same time, like the connection with Saturn just feels so grounding and so practical and less upheaval and more about initiating some type of change to move forward in a positive way. Now, let's see here. We're moving into our we're now in our second lunar quarter, 4-7, Mercury stations direct, right? So now Mercury's moving direct. There's a consummation type of moment here at 27 degrees Pisces. Now Venus will be in a conjunction with Saturn. It's a very serious moment, heart-to-heart moment. So it can be heavy or it can be grounding. And again, Venus is in a retrograde. And so again, this can feel like this can be one of those reality checks, but at the same time, a call to commit. And I'm really feeling the call to commit. Now, it might be a call to commit within yourself, right? With the retrograde of Venus, right? You could feel a push to define boundaries or deepen something or even face something that has been very difficult, like loneliness, if your connections aren't measuring up. This is one of those types of transits, is like there could be breakups here, right? When you come to terms with the fact that something's not measuring up and you have to, highlight what's worth keeping and what's solid and what needs to go. And maybe that's something that is internally experienced. It may not be something necessarily that you come out the gate doing, but you get very real about these relationships, and you might find yourself having to move in a new direction. This might, especially with Mercury stationing, direct at the same time on the 7th, you might be like, okay, it's time to go. It's time to actually start making the moves. I have all these long-term goals and plans. I'm feeling the drive and the spark to start putting things into place. There's optimism with Sun and Jupiter. And then Mercury stations direct, and then you have this conjunction with Saturn that's, really about getting disciplined and focusing on what really matters. It can be a sobering moment, there's no doubt, especially social and cultural vibes, because we are talking about Pisces. So it could be so much more than just yourself. But, you have to also know where Pisces is in your chart to get an idea of what area of life this is going to express itself in. Now, Venus is going to have the sextile to Uranus because she's meeting Saturn. So this is going to happen on the 8th, right after. So, and you can see all this blue, that was all that blue in the chart, right? All those trines and sextiles, very harmonious. So let's make sure you can see the chart. Yes. Again, Venus sextile Uranus, a spark of excitement meets a soft landing. So maybe you kind of had this reality check, sobering moment. Maybe you're deepening a commitment in some way. And then you have this sextile with Uranus that's just like, this is your chance to shake it up a little bit. Bring something fresh and playful into this scenario. And maybe you're maybe you're kind of practicing, maybe you're playing a role, maybe you're realizing what it is that is actually valuable to you, and you kind of step into that role a little bit. I kind of get this role playing thing with this sextile, right? Creatively, it's a gold mine. Oh my gosh. Originality of Uranus, the artistry of Venus, especially Venus in Pisces, being very inspired spiritually, and, really tapping into the muse as well. So this is also a really good time for finances because Uranus is in Taurus. And yes, it's been difficult in Taurus because Taurus represents the actual currency and the actual assets, but this is a good time for finances with the possibility of unexpected windfall. So maybe you come to this sobering moment about what you want to make decisions about or commit to, and then there's an opportunity to actually do something about it and make a breakthrough in some way. And now we're coming up to the full moon, right? And that's also when Venus stations direct and the Sun and Chiron come into a conjunction. So this often will bring up and illuminate those wounds of Chiron. So let's look at the chart here and bring it forward to the full moon. And you can see again that there's certainly a lot of the oppositional energy, but also too there is a lot of harmony and a lot of potential here amongst the Mars and Uranus and all the Pisces energy, and now the moon coming into Virgo. But when we get to the 12th, which is the full moon, and the full moon will be where? It'll be in Libra. Remember let's circle back here to the beginning when I talked about the T-square and how Lilith was going to be, Lilith was literally holding the space. Black Moon Lilith is the space where this full moon is going to be happening. And I at that point, the fact that the Sun will be conjunct Chiron, it will highlight those wounds of self and self-worth and not feeling like that we have inner fulfillment. I think it's going to really highlight it, but at the same time, the full moon is also going to illuminate within ourselves, what to look forward to, actually putting our energy towards and putting our focus towards the newness, right? A creative and joyous universe response to new things coming forward. We can start actually looking at that. But that will require being very honest and being willing to highlight or have highlighted for us those wounds. And, what does sunlight do? It disinfects, right? And some wounds need to be disinfected, right? And they certainly need to be seen for what they are. And I do feel like the Sun conjunct Chiron is going to do that for us at this full moon, but also that Venus is going to station direct. And I want to share with you where it's going to station direct. 25 degrees Pisces, the purging of the priesthood, right? And so what has been a subtle but very powerful emotional catharsis, Venus is going to station direct at this degree. Again, it'll become very palpable. It'll become something very meaningful. It'll be something visceral. It'll be something that we feel in our gut, in our intuition, this catharsis that comes through and just washes away all of the corruption within ourselves, within the collective, within our spirit, right? This is really, really powerful. I think that the potential and granted, how, our attitude about it, how we look at all of this is going to take time. And by the time, like I said, we get to September, we're going to have a completely different attitude about all of this. But in the meantime, when we get to this full moon and everything that's transpired in the first 2 weeks of April in particular, there's so much potential here. It's very, very exciting. I'm going to pull a couple of cards just to kind of round this all out, and then I'm going to call it good because it is time for me to move on to the next thing in my life. So, which is my quote-unquote day job, which is also still in the healing arts, is just working actually in real time with people. So let me, we're just going to pull one or two cards here. So one from the Raven's Eye Oracle and one from the Akashic Tarot, just to see what kind of guidance and wisdom comes forward for all of us. In terms of the archetypes and the imagery of these two decks. So from the Raven's Eye Oracle, any guidance, wisdom, support, inspiration for this upcoming solar eclipse and the first half of the lunar cycle, the first full lunar cycle of the equinox. Okay. Alrighty. Just take the one right on top. Unicorn's Breath. This came up actually for me in one of my personal readings not that long ago. Innocence, Divine Path, Savior. So the unicorn, Divine Path, Innocence, this is all got the Pisces feel. So Unicorn's Breath. This is from the Raven's Eye Oracle. If you're interested in this deck, you can look up the Mindful Raven on Facebook. She's an artist. Her studio is out in Seaside, Oregon, and this is her deck. So Unicorn's Breath, Divine Path, Savior, Innocence. And think about that cathartic purification that's at 25 degrees Pisces. And now we're moving on to the Akashic Tarot. Again, any type of guidance, inspiration, support, wisdom. Oh, one just fell right out. We're going for it. The Light of the World, number 10, right? The Light of the World. Don't forget to answer the door when Spirit's knocking. You know what I mean? So in this card, you see the individual. This has kind of got like a hermit vibe, but coming to knock on the door. So he's got the lantern. He's got the halo. He's looking at us. He's knocking on the door. The person inside, the window's open. The dude's looking down at his cat, but the cat's looking up at him and be like, hey, you going to answer the door? And then there's like a fire in the background. The Light of the World. Don't forget to answer when Spirit is knocking. Absolutely. All right, I love that. All right, my friends. I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you so very much. Enjoy this energy of the next 2 weeks. I hope you have some amazing goals in mind, desires that you want to manifest for this season. And just be patient. Patience. Know that eclipse cycles are deep. They are soul journeys. They are not going to necessarily, manifest right away, but there is lots of potential in this first half of April to really start acting on, initiating, that change without too much dramatic upheaval. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email is in the description box below. If you're interested in monthly subscription and supporting this work, you can get to that also in the description box below for monthly membership. If you're interested in just donating a one-time donation to support me doing these free forecasts, these new and full moon forecasts. My channel is not monetized. I get nothing from it. This is my offering. But if you do feel called to donate, those PayPal and Venmo is in the description box below as well. It's very much appreciated. And of course, if you're interested in your own personal eclipse forecast, you can go to my website and click on the store, and you can find the Eclipse Forecast tab. And don't forget to use your discount code if you're a monthly subscriber. You can get that through Subscribestar, and it depends on the tier that you are signed up for. So, my friends, thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you so very much. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. Please take care of yourself. Take care of others the best you can, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.